Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being part of the webinar series on engaging your employees. My name is Dr. Danielle Lord. I am the principal and founder of Archetype Learning Solutions. My goal is to help you as a leader, whether that's an executive leader, an owner, an HR professional, help you create an organization that has a culture of commitment, of highly committed employees who are engaged, working with you, for you, and helping your business be successful. And the best way to do that, from my experience and 32 years of doing this work, is through great employee engagement. This is a really important and timely topic right now because we are seeing employee engagement levels at an all-time low. Last Gallup estimates suggest they're at 27%. We've seen manager engagement levels dip for the first time in almost 30 years. And this is a really important topic because if you do not have engaged employees that are working for you, they're working against you and they're not doing anything to help your organization be successful. They're in a state of anger, frustration, fear, or self-preservation. So we often hear this term quiet quitting. I like to let leaders know that this is not quiet quitting. While they may be actively disengaged, they are also potentially sabotaging your organization, whether that's through passive or even active sabotage. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But this is the first of a webinar series of possibly 15. And so I'm going to do this in small chunks so you don't have to listen to a long, protracted webinar series over time. So we'll do this in some small bits and pieces. But primarily what I'm going to do is introduce you to the strategies that I have adopted in my own practice of doing employee engagement in large organizations. And they're purely from the heart. It's why I call them 12 heart-centered strategies. Employee engagement is so much more than a hot dog party or a summer barbecue or a breakfast. And so we're going to examine and explore all of that in this video series. I'll introduce you to the topics of employee engagement, why it's important, and how to use the 12 strategies as well as the toolkit. So stay with us. And if you want to get to specific topics, you can do that simply by looking them up through the title of the video. So this way you don't have to listen to every single topic as we go through it. So what are the goals? The goals of our session today is really to get a good understanding of what employee engagement means. I don't think that we have a good understanding of that even within our large organizations. Most people will tell you that it's about having satisfied employees. Gallup defines it very differently, so we'll examine what that means. It really is to help understand that creating a culture of commitment through engagement is a real benefit to your entire organization. And then over time, to utilize the tools and techniques of the different practices as a way to support that commitment amongst your team. If you have leadership competencies that you're currently using in your organization, they probably are very similar to the ones that are part of our archetype leadership competencies. If you don't have competencies or you don't know what they are, we do have a toolkit on our website, archetypelearningsolutions.com. You can go there and download our toolkit and create and develop your own competencies as well as find ways to measure those competencies. You can do that. A lot of people will tell you, well, these are soft skills and there's no way to measure them, but there actually is. So let me back up on my slide here and say for archetype competencies, if you're using those, or if you can map these to other competencies as well. This covers approachability, interpersonal savvy, and understanding others. And at the heart of our 12 heart-centered strategies is really about building that sense of community through relationships, trust, and communication. And for a long time, within probably the entire history of our organizations, and I spend a lot of time talking about this, but our entire history of organizations has been built on the basis of task and productivity, always making sure that we have our tasks are being accomplished, that we have high productivity rates. And with all that emphasis on task and productivity, we really often have missed the mark on building and establishing relationships, trust, and communication. So that's what this work is really all about, is the sense of relationships and bringing the relationships back into the organization so that we have happy, healthy employees that are supporting you in your business. So one of the things that I always do is I have a focus moment, and you can also read from my book. So in all fairness and transparency, this comes directly from my book, Focus Moments. This is an old photo. The second edition is currently out right now. But the idea of a focus moment is to leave behind the past and be fully present and mindful of the topic that we're about to address and talk about. We oftentimes in our busy society, we aren't necessarily fully present all the time. Sometimes or often we are thinking about the meeting that we just left, or thinking about the events of the morning or the events of the coming evening. So the idea with the focus moment is to make sure that we can be fully present. And this particular brief snippet is called The Weather. And this was written by, or it's a quote actually from Dr. Haim Gano. I don't have a date on this. I've come to the frightening conclusion that I am the decisive element in the workplace. It is my daily mood that makes the weather. As a leader, I possess a tremendous power to make an employee's life miserable or joyous. I can be a tool of torture or a spark of inspiration. I can humiliate or humor, hurt or heal. In all situations, my response influences whether a crisis will be escalated or de-escalated, and some will be humanized or dehumanized. And I think that this quote, this story is a really powerful reminder that as leaders, managers, even fellow coworkers and team members, we do have a lot of opportunity to create the space that is going to be beneficial or harmful for our employees and our team members. So the question for you as you go through the session or the remainder of your day, or even into tomorrow or the next week, when did someone change your weather? Hopefully for the better. All right, let's dive into what it means to have employee engagement, high employee engagement. Oftentimes, we'll spend some time talking about the differences between hygienic and motivator factors, because these are important considerations as we begin to dive into the heart-centered strategies that we'll talk about in the upcoming webinars. But I think just for a minute, as we kind of continue on with our focus moment, is when did someone take an interest in you as a human and your own development through your own career journey? And as you think about that, just reflect on, what did that feel like to have someone take that interest in you? How did it impact your engagement, your commitment, or your overall experience? And you can ignore those references down at the bottom. If you were in a particular course with me where we were kind of face to face, that would be referencing the participant guide. But for today, you can ignore those. All right. So this idea that we want to engage everyone every day is a really powerful statement, and it really differs from what we have been accustomed to or the practices that we've adopted in our organizations. So oftentimes we see employee engagement as something that we need to do in order to kind of rally the troops, maybe a fun summer activity that we're going to do just to maybe throw out a happiness bone to our employees so that we can make sure they're feeling good and happy and want to come to work. So maybe we'll have a summer barbecue or a lunch. But it is really rethinking the way that we approach our team members through quality daily interactions, being present, and really rethinking that to create that culture of commitment. The best part about the 12 heart-centered strategies that we'll lay out in the next coming webinars, they are completely free. They cost you almost nothing. And in fact, in my toolkit, even if there is a cost associated with something, I've provided you with a template that you can use and download that costs nothing. We see this frequently related to employee engagement, that executives primarily think they need to spend money on doing something. And it does not have a lasting impact. And part of the work in the book outlines a lot of stories that talk about kind of failed engagement efforts and what the ramifications were around those. And then what's next as you build on these is really follow up and follow through. So don't lose sight. There's a tool in here for you as well as a leader to make sure that you can have constant and continuous follow up and follow through what's called an after action review. Okay, let's quickly dive into employee engagement and what is it. It really measures the degree of enthusiasm, involvement, dedication that employees feel overall about their work, their leaders, the organization. Engaged employees, we know from the research, tend to go above and beyond. They have a higher degree of performance. They have a higher degree of commitment to your customers, to the processes, to the quality of the product. And they believe that their efforts make a difference. They're committed, they're enthusiastic, and they align their goals with the goals of the organization. And I think when we stop and think about it just from that perspective, we can say, wow, yeah, I need engaged employees. And what do I do now to get them? All right. So let's rethink this kind of culture of commitment, what it means. And we have years of academic research and industry research. Committed employees do their best, and they put the best work of the organization front and center. 100 years that we've actually been researching this. We've only been doing employee engagement surveys, then that data is taken by Gallup, and they have a research arm. So they take that data and they use it in their own research. We've really only been using employee engagement as a measure of overall happiness or commitment for about 30 years. But the thing that is important to understand is that committed employees have what we call affective commitment. You can see that affective with the A. That means they're committed from the heart. So there is cognitive, behavioral, and affective commitment. Affective, as I mentioned, comes from the heart. Behavioral commitment comes through the behaviors that we exhibit. So that's a great measure of good behavior overall that definitely benefits the organization. And then there's cognitive commitment. And cognitive commitment means, yeah, I'm committed because I have bills to pay, because this place is close to home, because I have to have a job. So cognitive, behavioral, affective. Behavioral is okay. Affective is really, or affective commitment is really what we're after in terms of the work that I do in my field of organizational development, leadership development, employee engagement, et cetera. So with that, good, highly committed, engaged team members tend to have less fatigue, less stress, and they are less likely to sabotage, and they tend to have more energy, positive energy that they're putting forth in your organization. So Gallup really defines that as discretionary effort. If you want Gallup's definition, if you're using any of Gallup's tools, and if you're using Gallup's survey, or if you're using the Q12 assessment or survey tool that's a little bit shorter than the larger Gallup survey is, my tools do actually align to the 12-question Gallup survey. That's the short one. So engage everyone every day. I love to remind leaders of that because it really is a daily activity. So your presence really does matter. And ultimately, it's up to you as a leader. That's a leader either by title or by behavior and actions that makes or ensures that employees feel valued, heard, motivated, and excited about the work that they do. So regardless of your title, regardless of your role, employee engagement is an all hands on deck activity. So we have oftentimes left this work in the hands of our managers. And as we see manager engagement begin to erode, I think that's becoming more and more difficult for managers to be the sole providers of employee engagement. Happiness tends to bubble up within the organization. So if we're creating a culture of commitment where everybody's feeling excited and engaged, now creating that happiness, that feel-good energy that people can really hold on to. They can feel it, they can experience it. So it really does take all of us to be sure that we can bring about this happiness change within our organization. And best of all, that comes from the heart. And it's completely free. It costs nothing, maybe a little bit of your ego and pride in order to step out of the comfort zone that maybe you have. This is, I have my manager name badge on right now, and therefore I'm head down and I'm going to my meeting and I'm going to ignore anybody else who comes in my way. But we have to let go of that, and we have to be able to have quality daily interactions. So free, simple, and practical advice and tips and tools that are in the book and that we'll be covering in the next series of webinars. So stay tuned. That's all I'm going to present for today. Again, my goal is to keep these short so that you can find the exact information that you need, maybe when you need it. But this first webinar is just intended to introduce you to me, to my book, and a little bit to engagement and why it's so important. And I'm going to conclude with a theory that's often used in political science and sociology. And you might be wondering, well, this isn't either political science or sociology, this is work. Now, I would say that my degree, organizational development, in the psychology realm, those are called industrial organizational psychologists. The work of organizational development was taken from that body in the psychology field and brought into more of the business field. And it is rooted in 5 social sciences, political science and sociology being 2 of those, the other 3 being psychology, social psychology, and anthropology. So political science and sociology definitely have a place in this work. So preface this conversation around the J curve with that knowledge that sociology and political science are definitely connected to this. But let's talk about the J curve. Again, very common theory in sociology and political science. And the J curve posits that when expectations are no longer met, people will revolt. So I say that without wanting to or trying to create a sense of alarm, but what it ultimately means is that people will take matters into their own hands. And I think we're seeing that right now with engagement scores being as low as they are. People will start to disrupt, and we'll talk about some of those instances in the next few videos about what that disruption looks like. People will just not come to work anymore. We'll have instances of quiet quitting, or they'll just leave your organization and go in search of something else. What that happens then, what that does is it creates an organization that is known to others that will not attract great talent. And so if you want to attract and retain top talent, you have to have a highly engaged organization. And that begins with everyone being committed to engagement through quality daily interactions. All right. That's enough for today. I hope you'll join me for the remainder of the series as we examine and explore all 12 of these strategies. Thank you so much for joining. I hope to see you another time, and you can always connect with me via email, Danielle at archetypelearningsolutions.com, or feel free to check out my website and see if there's some tools that you can use to begin to help with your engagement today. Thank you so much.